Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. This video is all about August, all the books I read for the month of August from the first book to the last book. If you've watched videos like this before on my channel, you'll know I'll go through each book in order. I'll give a brief review of what I thought of the book. I won't go into great detail on those books, because for most books I read, there will be a video in more detail about that book on my channel at some stage. Some in this video will be there already, some in the future. It just depends on how quickly I can get those videos edited and up on my channel. So if there's any books in this video that interest you, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the more detailed review on those books. But anyway, let's dive into the books from August now. The first book I read is The Night Stalker, written by Bryndza. It's a crime thriller, the second book in a series to feature protagonist Erica Foster. And just like book one in this series, this book has great characters. Every character is amazing. Small characters may be there for 1 or 2 pages, and big characters like the protagonist Erica and other big characters in this book and the first book as well. And the characters just are wonderful in this book. It doesn't matter what the crime's going to be in these books, I think, because the characters and also different layers in the books. Those two things combined are just wonderful without the crime itself. And the layers in this book are spectacular. So we have police intrigue and police politics going on in the police force in this book. Because when you think about it, police forces are big institutions, especially in big cities. And there's going to be politics going on. There's going to be different layers of intrigue. Going to be people who don't like each other, all that sort of thing going on in a police force. And that plays out in this book. I like the way it's handled in the book, adds depth to characters, adds intrigue and different layers in the story. So it's not a story that's all about the crime, it's about people as well. And I like that about this book and this whole series so far. Invisible Girl, written by Jewell. It's one of 2 books by Jewell I read during this month. This book was okay. It wasn't spectacular in my view. I think it's trying to be a slow burn thriller. But I like slow burn books if there's psychological tension. There's not enough of that in this book, so it lacks that in the story, and for me it downgrades the rating for that. But there are good things in this book. But a strange thing in this book is with the protagonist. So the protagonist is more a bystander. She sits back and she watches other characters do things, and she doesn't actually do things herself really in the story. That was strange to me. It's strange having a protagonist who's a more reactionary character, not a character driving things in the plot. I thought that was a strange choice. And it plays out like a domestic style thriller. So we have different tropes and different common things going on in this book. We have a guy who gets fingered for a crime. He gets fingered because he seems a bit odd to other people. A common trope in books like this. We have other characters that are good, I think. We have characters where there's doubt and intrigue about them. We've got secrets going on, but typical things you find in domestic type thrillers. But even though this book has a relatively small footprint, so most things occur within a small kind of setting in this story, in a neighbourhood, I wonder if there's too many subplots going on in this book. Did Jewell just lose track of some of those things in the story? I'm not sure. It felt like that sometimes in the story. Anyway, it's an okay read. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not fantastic. I then read The Night She Disappeared, written by Jewell. So book 2 out of 2 books from this author I read in August. It is split narrative past and present. Now it suggests this is a cold case, but for me a cold case needs to be a crime that's more than a year old. And in this book, the crime's just about a year old in the story. And I'm not sure if that's really a cold case or not. But anyway, put that aside, and I did enjoy the story. In the present day narratives, we have 2 narratives, and what I enjoy about one of them is it's about a character that has no link to the past. She's coming to the area in the present day, and she's been involved in, I guess, the modern investigation of the crime because she finds something, and that drags her into the story, and she starts learning more about the crime. I like when it happens in stories because that character learns things and gets a fresh perspective, and so does the reader. And I enjoy finding that in those characters, that fresh perspective, those surprises, because it just makes it surprising for me as a reader as well. The past narrative is good, but I do prefer the present narrative. But in the past narrative there are good things. We get character exploration, I think was very well done. We have intrigue and suspicion going on in those characters as well. We get into the mindset of certain characters in the past narrative. That's important from the present day narrative as well. And what I like about this book as well is, with the both narratives, past and present, they don't give away secrets. They don't foretell anything in the story from both narratives, so everything is surprising as you work along in this book. I like all the way it plays out. I like the structure. I've got to say it's one of my favourite Lisa Jewell books I've read. I have read one already in September. I won't go into what I thought about that yet, but this book I think is a good read. The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I think this is Lucy Foley's first thriller story, and it kind of tells. Now, if you haven't read the guest list, I suggest go read the guest list, because it feels like this book was a trial run for the guest list. Both books feel similar in my view. They have different settings, different locations, but some of the, I guess the structure, some of what goes on in the plot feels similar. But in my view, the guest list is a brilliant read. This book, not so much. I'm not saying it's terrible, I'm just saying it doesn't feel that polished. So essentially, what this is we have split narrative, but the split narrative is very close together. Only a few days apart, I think, in the story. We have a group of friends, or so-called friends, because they seem to hate each other. They spend New Year's Eve and New Year's Day together for many years, and in this story they're going to some isolated kind of lodge, and it's very isolated, and the weather's not very good either, like a great storm or something's happening. Anyway, they're there. We get point of view chapters from some of them, and in those chapters we just see they don't like each other at all. Some of them are just dreadful. They're mean, they're vile, they just seem to be fighting all the time in those chapters. We also get POV chapters from people who work at the lodge, and those POV chapters are different. They're darker in feel, they're shorter. But in those chapters, and they're mainly from two workers at the lodge, we're told time and time again that they're mysterious and they're dark, and I mean the workers. They think of themselves as mysterious and dark, and think of each other as mysterious and dark as well. And it's just time and time again, it repeats. It gets too repetitive and too much. You're being hit over the head by those two words, mysterious and dark, all the time. Anyway, combine those things and it gets a bit annoying, a bit fatiguing when you read the book. It is surprising in some aspects, so the whole book isn't terrible. It's an okay read, above average. The way it's written is okay. It's just some of what goes on in the book I think is a bit much. But the ending is surprising. There's certain twists and turns that are surprising as well. So the book's good in that way. So overall, it's not the best book by the author, not the worst book either, but I just don't think it's a fantastic read. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries, written by Heather Fawcett. It's a cozy fantasy and the first book in a series. I think the second book was released maybe this year or late last year. I'm not totally sure on that, but it is out now if you want to read that. But anyway, this story. I do like cozy books. I like cozy mysteries. I have read a couple of cozy fantasies now and I did enjoy them, and I thought I'd enjoy this book. It's okay, but it's not brilliant. It's not wonderful. I can't rave about it. And much of that is due to the writing style. So the writing style in this book kept me at arm's length. I couldn't really immerse myself in the story because of the way it's written. Then also just the way the plot plays out later on in the story. We have the main character. The main character is like an academic and researcher about fairies, and in this world, in this story, fairies exist and everybody knows about them. People have seen them, they talk about them, there's lecture tours about them, there's research, and there's university courses about them. And Emily is a researcher, a lecturer, academic, and she's writing an encyclopedia about fairies. She has one chapter to write, so she's going to the far northern reaches to finish her book. She's hoping to kind of witness and view and just observe elusive fairies in those far northern reaches. When she gets there, she finds out she has no personable skills. She offends everybody in this small village, and then someone she works with turns up and says he's going to help her. But is he really going to help her? Because he has a bit of a history of doing certain things. I won't go to that detail in this video, but the start of their relationship in this book is a bit shaky. But then we have this romance angle going on in the story between them. And that romance angle takes over the whole story in parts. And for me, when I started this book, when I read it, I didn't sign up for a romance book. I signed up for a cozy fantasy. I signed up for an interesting story about these fairies, not a romance book. But we get that for about half the book. Disappointing, I think. I didn't sign up for it, didn't need to be there, and that romance angle takes over everything in my view from about halfway to the end of the story. Home is Where the Bodies Are, written by Jeneva Rose. I enjoyed this a lot. It's a dark thriller, very psychological in nature. It's got great characters, it's got a great structure. It's quite a short book. The version I had was less than 300 pages, so quite short. But the structure, the characters, the mysteries in there, there's more than one mystery. Everything about this book plays out perfectly in my view. I really enjoyed it, and it's so dark and twisted. There's surprises along the way, and that atmosphere in the story is brilliant in my view. It's almost gothic in some ways as well, but it's like a modern gothic tale. Everything feels modern and new, with this gothic atmosphere lurking around the corner. It's there, it's not super strong, but it's just there in the corner. It feels like it's watching you. You know that sense you get sometimes where you're sitting in a room, maybe in a dark room watching something on TV or something, or reading a book. You get this strange sense that something in a dark corner may be watching you. If you have a cat and a cat's near you and they kind of stare behind you in corners or against walls, and you wonder, what are they staring at? That sort of thing. That gothic atmosphere was kind of like that in this story. Anyway, this book has multiple mysteries. We have a main mystery that's about these three siblings, and they return home, they reconnect because their mothers died. And they're searching through the home, just trying to sort out stuff in the house. They come across old home movies, and one of those home movies just sparks this huge mystery for them. There's also other mysteries because when the mother passes away, one of the daughters is there and she hears the mother's final words. And those final words spark two smaller mysteries as well. And every mystery in the story, all three of them, are captivating. They're compelling, engaging, and the way the characters play out, we have POV chapters from all of them, and the way they see each other and see themselves can be quite different, but it's very consistent in how it all works out in the story. So all that just makes for a fantastic book in my view. I recommend this book a lot. The Book That Broke the World, written by Mark Lawrence. It's a fantasy story, and it's book 2 in the Library trilogy. Now, book 1 in this trilogy was amazing. I loved it. And I thought this book would be as good or better. And sometimes in trilogies though, you get second book syndrome, where the second book may suffer in certain ways, or sometimes the second book is like a bridging novel, where it changes tone and feel because it's trying to be that bridge between books 1 and book 3. I'm not sure what it is about this second book because I was disappointed with the read. I don't know if it's a bridging novel, I don't know if it's second book syndrome, I'm not sure, because I didn't really enjoy it as much as the first book. It's not terrible, but just takes certain things and overdoes it, I think. There are certain things in this story, certain themes, that are very complex in certain ways. We learn about them in the first book. In this book, it takes those themes and it just overdoes it. We're told about it time and time again, and it just feels like you want to shout out enough. You know, I don't want to be told about it anymore in the story because I get it already. Just feels like that when you read this book. I felt like just screaming that when I read this. There are good things about this though. We have a couple of new characters, and at the start of this book, we meet them for the first time. And I enjoyed meeting them. They were super engaging. They were so interesting in the story. And I like some of the ways their storylines play out in this whole book. In some ways, not so much. But I found them engaging, interesting. They're a different race as well. We didn't learn about the race in the first book. But I want to know more about that race in this book. It's a shame really, and I wonder if book 3 will give us more information about their race. I don't know. I hope so. Another good thing in this book is this other race, this insectoid race called the Skier. And when they're in the book, it's a bit more dangerous. There's danger in the story about them. The pace picks up. Because that's one of the things in this book where it suffers is pacing. The pacing just seems way off. We have some good pace at the start of the story. Then for most of the book in the middle, the pacing suffers, where it should be picking up and just giving us a good pace to get us engaged more. It slows down, slows right down. Then parts where I don't want it to go too fast, it goes too fast. So the pacing just felt off to me. Maybe it's my expectations in the story, I don't know, but the pace felt just way off. And having the ski in the story, those scenes, were just wonderful because the pacing picked up at the right time, and the danger element, the immersive world building picked up more in those scenes as well. So for me, good things in this book. It's not fantastic, not as good as book 1, but I'm hoping book 3 is better because the end of this book suggests book 3 will go in a certain direction, and I wonder if that's going to be true or not. The 100, written by Kass Morgan. This is a difficult book to review because the concept of this book was not developed by the author. The people who were making the 100 TV show came up with a concept and they thought, well, let's get someone to write novels about this concept at the same time as a TV show is being written and developed. That's the whole idea. So Kass Morgan took that concept, she was given it, and she developed it in certain ways for the novels, and the TV series was developed in certain ways for that. But if I ignore the TV show and look at this book in isolation, it's very teen drama driven, also very romance driven. And I say that because when the 100 teens go back to Earth, in those point of view storylines, and I think we get 2 or 3 main points of view when the teenagers go back to Earth, I think it's 3. A lot of that is focused on relationships. Person A still likes person B, but person B doesn't like person A. Person B may like person C, and person C definitely likes person B. Person D kind of likes person A, we think, and person A may like person D, but also still like person B. But person B is getting confused about person A now and also about person C. Then there's also other dramas going on that aren't romance related, and it involves other characters on this world as well. So a lot of it is romance driven. And I kind of understood that before I read the book, but I didn't expect it to be that romance driven. So it's a bit too much, but I do want to read the rest of the series to see what happens next. But then we have a point of view storyline from a teenager who's still on that vessel orbiting Earth. And almost that whole storyline is about a romance, and I wasn't really interested in that at all. It just seemed to carry on and carry on. It was kind of like, was it Romeo and Juliet? Was it a woe is me kind of storyline? I don't know. It just went too long about that romance angle. But it's there because in that end of the storyline, there's something big that happens, and it needs to be that point of view to see it happening in that vessel in the orbit above Earth. So I enjoyed it for that, but not the whole romance story. So a bit disappointing with the book. But when I think about this book, and I think about the concept, I mean, you can put so much more in it. More excitement, more danger. It could have been more engaging. I mean, it's a YA book. Why not have, big scenes in there? Anything can happen. But it's not that exciting, not that dangerous feeling, and not that engaging. A shame, really, because it could have been so much more. Rules of Prey, written by John Sandford, is the first book in a long-running series starring protagonist Lucas Davenport. It's police procedural for the most part, but it feels odd to me. It's not odd in the way it's structured. It's odd with some of the characters and just some of the things that go on in the story. So for example, the main character, Lucas Davenport, he's written to be almost like James Bond. He's super clever, can do anything basically. All these women, everywhere he goes, women that throw themselves at him. And he treats women just like objects in this book. And he has women just going at the same time, many of them, and they all seem okay with it. And they forgive him for it when they find out about each other, even in the story. So that all felt like James Bond to me. It felt quite strange. And then he's meant to be super clever, like the smartest police officer on the force. And he works alone as well, which is odd because I thought all police officers worked in pairs because of, a risk element and a safety element, but he works alone. But he doesn't come across as being super clever and super smart in the story because he bases his whole investigation on 2 main things at the start. A witness sees a type of shoe and he focuses on those shoes for some reason. It's a very common type of shoe, but he thinks, okay, we find somebody with this common type of shoe, I've got my suspect. And also then hair colour, because hair colour is so unique apparently. So he focuses on a type of shoe and a hair colour. And he thinks, okay, I'm going to find someone who wears those shoes, has this colour hair, and that's it. We've got our person. I mean, it's not super clever and super smart, but it's written like that in the story. Seriously, it's like that in the book. And then just certain behaviours he has as well. He thinks that he can do illegal searches, and with an illegal search, if he finds something, they'll get a warrant. I mean, in what sort of world do you get a warrant? when you find something illegally with an illegal search. You don't. It never happens. It'd be thrown out of court straight away. So it just seems to me that the author of this book, I don't know, just wasn't that. He's clued into police procedure, I'm sure he is, because apparently he was a reporter before he wrote this story. But it just seems like in this book, police procedure is thrown out the window in certain stages. And I get there's a reason for that, because Lucas Davenport, the main character, is written to be like an anti-hero. He's a bit rogue. He does things outside the lines. It's meant to make him engaging, and it does really, because many readers look at him and think he's awful. Many readers look at him and think he's great. He's so engaging. He's wonderful. So he's very divisive, and that just attracts engagement, attracts readers because of that. And I get that why he's written like that, there's a purpose behind it. I'm indifferent to the whole thing. You know, I don't hate the character. I don't love the character. I'll see where the character goes in future books in this series. I've read one book so far, so I've got many more books to go. But at the moment, I just see this character is written to be certain things, and his actions don't match up to what other people say he is in the story. So we'll wait and see what happens in future books in this series. Into the Fire, written by Peter Liney. So book 2 in the Detainee trilogy. And the first book in this series was wonderful. I loved it. And I thought this book would be great as well. It's not. And again, is it second book syndrome? Is it a bridging book? When you're reading it, you don't really know. You just, if you enjoy it as much or you don't enjoy it. And for me, it started out very good. Beginning of this book was wonderful, so engaging, so gripping, and I thought this book would be just as awesome as the first book. And for maybe the first 5 chapters, 6 chapters, it was. I mean, our main characters, they escape a normal situation in book 1. They go to the mainland, this big city, they think it's going to be wonderful, and they suddenly find themselves in like a war zone. There's chaos, there's mayhem. It kind of felt like that movie franchise, The Purge, if you've ever seen any of those movies, where people just roaming the streets, attacking each other and killing each other. That's what this city felt like when they get there. And they're scared, and their reactions are just perfect, and it just all fitted so well in those first chapters of this book. And then it just stagnates. The characters want to get out of the city, but instead they hunker down in this church kind of basement, and they stay there for the whole book basically. And they're in danger. They're meant to be feeling in danger and threatened. So they don't run, they stay there. Then the main character decides, look, this other character in the book, she's blind. I'm going to help her. I want to see if we can get an operation for her to get her sight back. So putting aside all their danger, all their fear, he goes hunting around and trying to find a doctor, a surgeon who can cure her. And for some reason, the first person he comes across can help her. And it just feels that's so coincidental in the story, but also just odd as well, because if you're in danger, if you've got all these things going around, you've got troops and armed forces in the city trying to hunt you down and find you, you don't go wandering around for a doctor, for an operation that's not important, not crucial to that person's survival. I mean, why would you do that in the first place? I don't know. It happens in this story, and I don't know why it's used in that way. It feels like it's a part of the plot to drive other parts in the story as well, later on in the story. And I just felt it was an odd way to get there. And then we have buildings in the city being destroyed all over the place, but some buildings aren't. And it just felt like every building that wasn't destroyed ties into our main character's past. That's coincidental as well. And it's too much coincidence in the story. So it felt very clumsy in the way the plot played out. It felt so different to book 1. Hush Little Baby by J.A. Baker. It's a thriller, and it's an arc read for me in August. And I read this book without knowing much about it. I read it because I enjoyed a previous book by the same author. And I thought, okay, I'll give this a go because I like the other book so much. Now, this book is hard to give a review on because of the subject matter and the themes in the story. It's very emotional. There's high emotions in this book. There's split narrative, past and present. There are links between the narratives. I won't go into what they are, but I just felt that even though the themes are important and the message in this book is important, it feels just overdone in a way. It feels like we've got certain themes and messages, and as a reader, you're just hit over the head by them constantly. It just feels too much in the book. I understand why the 2 storylines in past and present have those themes, and I understand why the author has written those themes as well, and to be honest, it wouldn't be an easy book to write. There's so many ways this book can go wrong, I think, and I get the impression the author was kind of walking on eggshells in some cases, in some scenes, when writing this book. You get that feeling when you read this, so I understand all that when it goes into writing this story. And maybe that impacts some of the flow, some of the way just scenes play out, who knows. But for me, even though some parts are gripping and engaging, there are other parts that are repetitive. And that repetitive element in the story just takes away some of the power from those emotions and the power of those scenes as well. So overall, not a terrible book, but it's not perfect by any means because of that repeating nature in the storyline. September Mourn, written by Jess Lourey. It's a mystery, an arc read for me for August as well, and book 5 in the Murder by Mystery series. Now I've had issues with this series for the first 4 books anyway, because the first 4 books were based in a small town, the same setting, and I like small town mysteries, but unfortunately in those books, every character is over quirky. If you think about a jug of water, and a jug may hold 4 cups for instance, and every cup of water equals 5 or 10 quirks. I'm not talking 5 or 10 quirks per character, I'm talking 5 or 10 quirks for the whole book. For most books in this series so far, you'd have your jug over half fill, maybe 3 cups even. And this book is a bit better because maybe it's down to 1 cup. And I think it's because of change of setting. In this book, it's set away from the small town and it's set at a state fair, a state country fair. And that setting of the state country fair also reminded me of country fairs I went to when I was young. I went to many of them for different reasons, but I enjoy them all. I enjoyed looking at the animals. I enjoyed looking at the contests, the cooking contests and the flower arranging and the preserves, that sort of thing. I enjoyed everything about country fairs. I'll be one of those people who would go to a country fair and kind of just walk around and look at everything at least once, sometimes maybe twice. And I guess those memories of going to country fairs helped me engage and relate to that setting in this book, and I enjoyed it because of that. There are certain characters, apart from the main character from that small town, who turn up in this book as well, but they carry with them only a few quirks, and I like that. I appreciate the fact we have fewer quirks in this book. Like I said, if you have a jug that holds 4 cups, and every cup is 5 to 10 quirks, this has 1 cup of water in that jug. The mystery is good. It's not the best mystery in the series. The best mystery I think is still the 4th book. The culprit in this book I think is too easy to pick, but I liked the fact we get a bit more history about our protagonist. And I enjoyed that in this book. Certain characters that turn up maybe for this book alone carry with them clues and stories about the history of our protagonist. So it gives more development to that character. It widens her world a bit as well. It widens the reader's world in this series. And I think sometimes in series it's okay to just go away from that main setting sometimes. Get a fresh perspective on things, break it up a bit. I think some series need that. Clockwork Angel, written by Cassandra Clare. It's the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. Now, I've recently read the first 3 books, or the first trilogy of the Mortal Instruments by the same author, and I enjoyed a lot of the things in those books. And so I thought, I'm going to read all the books by this author. And there's a certain reading order I'm following. So I'm going to read the first book in this trilogy, then the first book in the second Mortal Instruments trilogy, then it's book about. So the next book I'll read is the second book in this trilogy, and so on. And I don't know the entire order of reading off the top of my head, but that's my immediate future plans anyway for this author. But this book I thought was good. It's set, I think, around 1870s in London. Look, the historic setting isn't the best really. We get a bit of historic clothing. We don't get much historic feel in their dialogue. The settings sometimes have an historic feel, not in great detail. I think basically it's going to be in a historic setting, but it's going to have a modern day feel as well, especially in how characters act and how they speak. You have to, I think, to keep the modern day audience engaged in the story. But the book itself was interesting. So there are certain things in the characters and the plot that may remind you of the first trilogy in the Mortal Instruments. I mean, you can't get away from that. There are little links there, little things that feel the same. But I think there's a lot in this book that's different and unique, and I enjoyed the book because of that. One of the great things in this story is we have this thing about clockwork devices or clockwork objects. It gave this like a Doctor Who feel for me in the story, and I enjoy Doctor Who, and it reminded me of that when I read this story. It's a bit steampunk as well. I haven't read a lot of steampunk in the past, but I get the impression there are steampunk elements in this story, and I quite like that. It's something different as well. There's a lot to like about this book. I mean, there's other things not to like so much. We have a lot of padded out dialogue. I mean, there's heaps of it in the book. We have a lot of bit of angst going on in this book. But one interesting thing I enjoyed, and I don't know if it's deliberate or not by the author's part, but it's about how feminism is perceived in the times. We have two main characters, and they approach feminism in different ways, and what they think a feminist should be, or what they think a woman should be in the time, in the 1870s London. We have one character who could be a shadow hunter. She doesn't want to be. And instead, she wants to be a lady, like a proper lady, her view of a proper lady. She wants to be that. She wants to find a husband and just be in society. She wants to be gentle. She wants to have the dresses and the hair done and all that sort of thing. She wants that. She thinks a woman in those times should be that. Then we have another character who wants to be a woman in charge of the Institute of Shadowhunters in London at that time. And she's fighting misogyny, she's fighting sexism to do that, because at that time, women are seen not to be in charge of anything. And there's so many men in that group who don't want her to be in charge. So there we have two characters in the same book who have opposing views of what a woman should be during those times. That was interesting in the story, I think, because it gives different perspectives in the book. And this makes those characters unique and different. And we didn't get those sort of things in the Mortal Instruments trilogy. So in my view, this book, I'm not sure about the other two books in the series yet, haven't read them, but this book is strong enough to be different on its own. It has so many different things going on, different themes and concepts, and I enjoyed this book because of all those things. I then read City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare. So like I said just before in this video, I'm going to read Book 1 of Infernal Devices, the first book of this trilogy in the Mortal Instruments trilogy, the second trilogy. Then I'll read Book 2 of the Infernal Devices, then Book 2 in this trilogy, and so on, till I read the 3 books in each trilogy. There's not much growth going on from the first trilogy, the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series. Not much growth at all. The characters feel the same, basically. I think maybe it's 6 months to a year between the end of Book 3 or the first trilogy and the start of this book. The lack of development, lack of growth in characters was disappointing to me. What I like about this book, though, is this book is heavily focused on Simon, and Simon is my favourite character in this whole series. I enjoy him so much. He has great growth in the first trilogy. I'm not sure about what growth he's going to have in this trilogy. He feels a bit different in this first book in this trilogy than the first 3 books in the first trilogy anyway. But I like the fact it's heavily focused on him in this story. He's interesting. He does some silly things, I think, in this book. He's written to be almost like a jerk character, but he's also super engaging in different ways. The big baddie, the big evil in this book feels more developed and more interesting than the first trilogy, and I appreciate it because of that. And those 2 things mainly got me hooked in this story. But when I compare the Mortal Instruments books to the Infernal Devices, at the moment, I prefer the Infernal Devices, so I'm not sure what's going to happen as both trilogies progress. We'll wait and see. But at the moment, the Infernal Devices is winning just by a little bit. So we're almost finished for August. We have 3 books left to talk about. This book is Fatal Intrusion, written by Jeffery Deaver and Isabella Maldonado. It was an arc read for me in August. It's a thriller. And with Jeffery Deaver as one of the authors, I adore his books, and I thought this would be a fantastic story. And what I like about Jeffery Deaver is with different series he writes, and this being the first book in a new series. Each series is different in feel and different in concept. There may be thrillers, maybe crime books, but they have a different focus, maybe an investigation focus or investigation skill. And this book is like a techno thriller. And one of the protagonists, there's 2 protagonists, and one of them is a hacker. and that brings in kind of tech elements, hacker elements into the story. And I like that about Jeffery Deaver as an author. He tries out new things. I'm not sure about the other author, not read a book by her in the past. I will in the future. I want to see what she writes by herself. And I thought combined they'd have a great book. It's not that great in my view. The pacing feels off. There's a cat and mouse type game going on in the story, not that engaging to me. There's two protagonists and one of them I couldn't really engage with at all. I struggled a lot with one of them, but one I thought was wonderful. So different things in this book are good and different things I struggled with. And in my view, there's Jeffery Deaver books I adore. There's not many times I read a Jeffery Deaver book and I struggle. But I did struggle with this one. The tech elements don't go deep enough in my view, not detailed enough. I get why, because this is a book for a general audience. And if you're going to a general audience, you don't want to go too deeply in those sort of things because the pace slows down. But anyway, the pacing was a bit off, so who cares really? The pace could have been slowed down a bit with more detail, and it wouldn't have ruined the book anymore because the pacing in this book alone is just off in my view for almost the entire story. There is intrigue and some thrilling aspects in the book, a bit of tension, suspense. There's enough there to enjoy, but it's not fantastic. It's not Jeffery Deaver's usual standard. And I hope if there's more books in this series, we get a better outcome from those books. Murder in the Scottish Highlands, written by D. MacDonald. A cozy mystery, the first book in a new series, and an arc read for me in August. Look, I enjoyed this. It wasn't fantastic, but it is enjoyable and fun. And when I think about books set in Scottish Highlands, I think of a small village setting. I think of great scenery. I think of characters that may be a little bit quirky, but their quirkiness seems perfect for the setting and for the book. And I think of cups of tea, I think of little snacks here and there, afternoon tea, all that sort of thing. And I got all that in this book. I kind of like the mystery. The mystery plays out well. What I like most about this book is the characters. The characters I think are wonderful. And by the end of the book, I felt like I'd known those characters for years. I'm not sure what other people think about cozy mysteries, but in my view, as the characters and the setting, it needs to be more memorable than the crime itself. That's my personal point of view on cozy mysteries anyway, especially cozy mysteries in a series. But this book was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the main character. I like her background before she starts out in this series. In her background, she was a researcher for TV documentaries. She uses those skills in investigating a crime in this book. One thing about the investigation was a bit odd to me, is she asks people like guests at her B&B. So she starts running a B&B in the Scottish Highlands in this small village. She gets guests to help her investigate. And in this village, people don't talk to outsiders. They're not going to answer questions from outsiders. That was a bit strange to me in the book. I wasn't sure why that happened in the story. But apart from that, good characters, fun characters, a few quirks here and there, some laughs along the way, and I can't wait to read book 2 in this series. The last book for August was In Constant Fear, written by Peter Liney. Book 3 in the Detainee trilogy, dystopian sci-fi. Looking at the whole trilogy overall now, we have book 1 that was amazing, book 2 nowhere near amazing, better than average, and book 3 slightly better than book 2. But it's a shame when you have a first book that's brilliant and the rest of the books aren't brilliant because it ends on a low note. There are good things in this book though, and like the rest of the trilogy, this book focuses on the human side. It is dystopian, there is sci-fi elements, but the human side plays a huge role in this whole trilogy, and it plays a big role in this book. And I enjoy that because the characters add so much to the whole 3 books in this trilogy. I just wish though that this battle, this conflict between our heroes and the big baddie that ends up being in book 2 and book 3 was written differently. Because in this book, that conflict falls into a trap many books fall into. I think it may even be a trope, because the villain, the big baddie, becomes one of those characters that over-explains things and then holds back. I mean, this big baddie, this big villain, has enough firepower, enough strength to wipe out all our heroes without a thought. But the big baddie doesn't. Holds back and instead stands there and explains things, over-explains things. And that just feels odd to me because why have that in a story? Doesn't make sense, doesn't feel real, it feels so out of place, so forced in the narrative. It just doesn't make for a good story in my view. It just feels like the writer of the story didn't know where to go with the book. Wasn't the best choice. And somewhere in the writing process or the editing process, I'm not sure why editors just say, just rewrite that, rethink that. I mean, is it because they've already written the whole trilogy and they think it's too much to rewrite? I don't know. But it just feels like, it feels strange to me. That's all I can say. It just feels out of place and odd. But putting that aside, the rest of the book is okay. There's some sci-fi things there that are good. There are character things there that are good. But nothing there I can rave about. There you have all the books I read in August, from the first book to the last book. I wonder, what books in this list interest you? Have you read any of them? Do you plan to read any of them and why? What books in August were your favourites? Do you recommend any books you read in August for me to read? My TBR is quite big, so if you recommend books, it doesn't mean I'll get to them straight away, but I will get to them eventually. I just have to slot them in somewhere. On my channel, I review books from all different genres, so hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on book reviews on your favourite genres. On the screen now is a link to another video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.